Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. Big show for you tonight. Solomon Wilcots from Pro Football Focus is going to join us in the next segment. James Palmer from NFL Network a little later on. But right now, I'm joined by Benjamin Allbright. Ben, how's the Batcave?
Batcave is doing well. We had to dehumidify, clean up after the bats a little bit, but we're all good now.
You're so weird. Hey, listen, since the last time we did this show, Shelby Harris now back in the fold. And hey, listen, this seems like a massive bargain for the Broncos. A little bit of a surprise based on the value we thought his contract was going to get. So what ultimately happened here?
Well, what happened was the market cratered on Shelby. Shelby changed agents twice during the process. He had initially had a boutique, smaller firm. He decided he wanted to go bigger going into this process. Well, the problem with going bigger is bigger has a lot of clients, and they've got to move those clients around too, sometimes the same position you have. So I think ultimately Shelby settled on the third agent that he went with, wants to revisit this process next year. But when guys like DJ Reader, get signed by the Bengals, and then you've got Buckner getting traded for by the Colts, it kind of puts you in a bad spot because the market has cratered on you. So Shelby thought the best thing for him to do was come back to the Denver Broncos, give it another go in a system you're familiar with, and re-hit free agency next year.
Now, you and I disagree just a little bit on when the Broncos should maybe still target a defensive lineman in the draft. Look, you added Jarrell Casey, you added Shelby Harris in free agency. Great job there. But, these are a one-year deal for Shelby Harris, 1-year deal for Mike Purcell, 1-year deal right now for DeMarcus Walker. I think you still consider a premium pick with defensive line. I imagine you disagree, though.
Yeah, I don't think so. If you mean premium pick, you're talking a day one, day two pick. It's tough to do because when you look at what the Broncos are right now, they're a team that needs to continue to add talent, but they also need impactful players early. They're not at the point with a stock roster where they can afford to, just keep drafting guys behind other guys. They've got to address some needs that they still have on this roster. So I don't think that you can do that. If somebody happens to be there, it's just a ridiculous spot. Maybe you grab them. I really like the kid out of Missouri, Elliott. I think that he could be something day two. And if you've got a couple extra picks there, maybe you could make something work. But I think you've got other needs to address. And I think the defensive line at this point is a luxury because who are you pulling off the field to put that guy on the field?
Yeah, keep an eye on Jordan Elliott. That's a guy that you've hashtag my guy that you put out there. So if he ends up being pretty good, and if the Broncos get him, is even better. Okay, so let's talk about the draft a little bit more. A conversation we've had on Broncos Country Tonight about players with injury histories coming out into the draft. And ultimately right now it's a different kind of setup. You can only have video sessions as your player visits. You can't bring these guys in. Any kind of follow-ups on medicals? What do you think it's ultimately going to mean for the draft?
I think players that are marginal, I think players that have injury red flags and players that you're concerned about a work ethic or a personality are going to slide in this draft. You're not going to have the opportunity to cross-check those things in person with your medical staff, with your guys. And so I think teams who are making multi-million-dollar investments in these guys aren't going to be as ready to make those kinds of commitments to some of these guys. You'll see some of them slide a little bit in this draft.
How did you ultimately view players with injuries? Like as a former scout, when you talk to guys, because I got to imagine there were times when you'd see a player on film and say, man, this guy could be really, really special if it weren't for the injuries. I know Bryce Hall coming up in this upcoming draft is a guy that you're really excited about. So as a former scout, how did you categorize those guys?
Well, you let the medical guys tell you what they think of that. Medicine has evolved too. It used to be, an ACL used to be a career ender, and now you're bouncing back from that kind of stuff in a year, maybe less in some cases. So as medical technology advances, you got to kind of have to evolve your views on that. But if a guy has a recurring injury history, that's a definite red flag. Everybody's going to get hurt a little bit. It's a violent football game. You're going through 50 or 60 car crashes a game. So everybody's going to get dinged up a little bit. The question is whether these are long-term things, whether it's, arthritis in the knees that it's going to shorten your career, whether it's a propensity for breaking a foot or especially turf toe. Turf toe is one that if they get that, it never goes away. So that's one you want to jot down.
Well, and as Vic Fangio pointed out in a press conference earlier this week, you're going to have to really rely on the film. 90%, he says, usually comes from the film. So in this case, you're going to really have to lean on it. Let's come back to the current Broncos. And we know that off-season workouts are going to be a bit of a challenge for every team in the NFL. They might not even happen really up until training camp. You hope for training camp. If you're Drew Lock, what are you working on during this time?
Well, if you Drew Lock, you try to immerse yourself in Pat Shurmur's playbook. You're still a guy that's coming from an offense at Missouri where you had one-word play calls. Last year, you got your feet wet with the West Coast offense and the verbiage. You want to make sure that you've got all of that down. You want to do all the other things. It's not about going out and having throwing sessions with your guys, because you can't do that right now, social distancing. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to immerse yourself in all the other things that make you a quarterback. I know what my protection calls is identifying, getting the tape on and identifying and looking at the way people try to blitz me and what I identify well, what I don't identify well. You really want to immerse yourself in all the things that make a great quarterback. Get that playbook down and go from there. Anybody can get out there and throw the football, and they have plenty of time to do that.
Yeah, but that's the only thing that I want to add in there or ask you about is getting timing with your receivers. We see that there's such a big deal for especially young quarterbacks, and you're in a new system. You're going to have at least one, if not two, new wide receivers to throw to. How do you simulate that?
Well, the thing about having Cortland Sutton and potentially a Henry Ruggs is that if you throw the ball out there, those guys are just going to go get it, whether it's Ruggs streaking down the field or Cortland skying for the football. You just put the football out there, let those guys make a play on it. Timing will come. You get those guys in camp, timing will come. They'll have weeks to get that down.